Hi there, Adam Gower here of GowerCrowd.com, and today we're going to be demystifying farmland investing with my guest Paige Gilligan of Risk Mitigators and Advisors. Now here's how farmland investing works. California is by far the largest food producer in the US. The Central Valley of California is the main farming area, yet it is suffering from a drought, which is creating water scarcity issues. Recent regulations to mitigate the risk of overusing the limited water supplies is going to result in have and have-nots. And while some farms will flourish, others will go barren and become unproductive. Now here's cool thing number one. Farmland is little understood by most investors, yet large institutional investors are plowing into the space, if you'll forgive the pun. So prices are going up. Cool thing number two is that unlike apartments, most people have no intuitive understanding of the economics of farming, which makes it a very inefficient market in comparison to apartment buildings where everyone and their mother are buying. This means that there is less competition in farmland than there is in apartments or other real estate asset classes. So those people in the know have a significant competitive advantage. Cool thing number three is that farmland real estate investing is at its core no different actually from other real estate asset classes when you think about it. So for example, you want to be in areas with good water in farmland, just as you want to be in areas with good employers and population growth in multifamily. Farming is a highly fragmented industry, so consolidation like you see in the self-storage industry is how to build disproportionate wealth investing in farmland. The list of comparisons with other asset classes goes on. My guest today, Paige Gilligan, is a foremost expert on farming in the Central Valley of California, and today you're going to learn some of the ins and outs of this fascinating asset class. To find out more about Paige and her company, go to the podcast page at GowerCrowd.com and be sure to click on the subscribe button you'll find somewhere on that page so you can get access to our weekly newsletter, which covers the world of, actually exclusively covers the world of real estate, crowdfunding, and syndication. It's completely free. Go ahead, subscribe there. All right, that's it. Let's get rolling. Here she is, farmland expert Paige Gilligan of Risk Mitigators and Advisors. Paige, it's an enormous pleasure to see you again. Thanks so much. I know you've been very busy. You just got off a couple of calls. So let's get straight into it. So what I'm looking to talk about today is this idea that there are some substantial changes going on in the Central Valley of California in the farming industry. Correct. And that primarily relates to water, but also because it relates to water, speaks to some of the opportunities that might emerge today looking forward into the future. So let's start with water. And this, tell me first of all, what is California going to run completely dry? Why don't we just start there?
Well, I think you can put this as far as is California going to run dry, right up along with is California going to fall into the ocean, right? Because everybody says, oh, well, we're just going to have this big, massive earthquake and California is going to fall into the ocean. Being in the Central Valley, I say, well, maybe that'll help the real estate in the Central Valley because then it'll be oceanfront property, right? So exactly I don't have to live over on the coast right now. But water, it is definitely a concern, and water, we've always had water, but the idea of will it always be there, that continues to be a question. But it's not so much will it go dry, it's how will we utilize it the best that we need to. I think that's more of the question. Right.
So, look, one of the biggest impressions that investors have of California, Central Valley water problem is they have in their mind's eye an image of the Sahara Desert, right? So you just got hundreds of miles in each direction of dry sand dunes. But that's not what's going to happen, is it? What's happening is that water has been overdrafted, is the term. It's been overutilized, been pulled out of the ground in too much volume. And that is what's causing the problem. So
yes. So
go ahead, tell us.
Yeah. So to explain that a little bit more, the Central Valley of California is very fertile, Mediterranean style weather that we have, the desert where it is, it's very hot, but it also gets very cold. So we have a great range of temperatures and the ability to grow a lot of crops. And from a historical perspective, the Central Valley, we used to be a very large lake basin. And so again, another thing that contributes to fertile ground. But as the population has grown across California and across the West, it's those limited resources now go to support a lot more population than what they were originally intended to do. And we have great water projects in California, from the state water project as well as the federal projects that were set up to move water throughout the state to be able to make sure that we could capture water in the north, send it to the south when it was needed, and supply all of the needs for municipal as well as agricultural. And there is a lot, if you drive around the Central Valley, you'll hear a lot about Westlands Water District. And there's a lot of fallow ground out there.
So what is Westlands? So first of all, what's a water district?
Okay, so
it's an irrigation district, though, isn't it? It's Westlands Irrigation District, or is this one called?
Well, there's irrigation districts and water districts. Okay, so the difference is who can be on the boards. They actually all do the same thing, right? They control water for users. They have users. They have developed an infrastructure that supplies water to the population in that area, whether it be agricultural or municipal. And then so each of these irrigation districts, water districts, has different charges, different costs for their water, and receives their water from different sources. So a lot of our sources come from the surface water, which is what you hear about, and surface water is what Sigma it is really concerned with.
Okay, so hang on, I am going to interrupt you because I know you know everything about this topic. And I know almost nothing, but I know more than nothing. And so what I do know is that some of the terms you're using are going to be completely lost. So let's just start at some real basics. Surface water is different from groundwater because surface water is actually transported across the surface of the land in canals from dams and etc. And groundwater is water that is essentially stored underground in what are called aquifers. Right? That's what people are drilling to pull up for. Now, Sigma, again, you kind of cast this term off casually. Sigma is, just kind of give me the elevator story. What is Sigma?
Okay, Sigma is the sustainable, the acronym is for Sustainable Groundwater Management Act. And what that did, we had decided several years ago in California that we needed to be able to have a sustainable water supply for California. And we were overdrafting the water from the groundwater, and we wanted to be able to have a sustainable water supply going into the future. So we passed a law, like we do in California for many, many things. And so it passed a law that we would get together on a sub-basin basis. So we have different subbasins across California, and within those subbasins are where we have the water districts. So there are many water districts within each subbasin.
Right.
So now everybody needs to come together and play well in the sandbox together to make sure that each subbasin is able to have a quote sustainable yield of being able to, like, the water that comes in equals the water that goes out.
Right.
So that is the overarching theme.
Right. So the idea of Sigma is to essentially apportion the water that there is, right? Now, up until now, I'm going to oversimplify this a little bit, Paige, but up until now, essentially what's been allowed is unlimited drafting, unlimited use of water resources essentially by farmers, right? You could, if you owned a piece of land, you could drill down and pump as much as you want. That's caused problems because it's essentially sucked water out of areas that really don't really have good access to water, and it's cannibalized the water system in a way. What Sigma does is it starts to apply layers of control over that unlimited access in order to create a sustainable system, one that isn't constantly being overdrafted. Is that a fair summary of the basic intent?
Sort of. So the idea, because in California, we also have several municipalities, towns, cities, and counties that also rely strictly on groundwater. So it's not just agricultural aspects. So we have, and we have cities now that I've been seeing the notices that they're going to run out of water this year because it's been so dry, the drought that we've been in, we've not been able to replenish. So it's more than just agriculture, but agriculture gets the majority of the press because
right.
they, they don't think about a municipality having to, pump groundwater as well, when they actually pump a lot of groundwater.
Yeah,
so
well, you also
go to an individual well, right? The farmer's not pumping as much, but it was before Sigma, the state of California allowed you to, if you wanted to drill a well, you applied for a permit, you found a well driller, and you put in a well and a pump, and you were good to go. And they also have sold rights on rivers, like riparian rights, that you have water rights off of the river if you actually have ground that touches the river. So we've had these in place. It's just that there has not been the monitoring.
Right, aspect. No control over, unlimited, essentially. So what this is going to leave us with are essentially the simple story or the simple summary of what's going on with Sigma. I mean, it's so complicated, Paige. I've been looking, it's like mind-blowing. It's like attempting to describe the entitlement process.
Yes.
For an apartment building in the middle of LA to somebody. If you start even getting close to even to the surface of that, it can be overwhelmingly intimidating and complicated. But the fact is, people do work through it. That's how we have progress. In the same way, there will be people who will work through the implications and of Sigma, right? What's going on with Sigma, these new restrictions. So what that means is that there will be a world, and I'm really just focused on farmland, essentially. There will be a world of water haves and have-nots, and there'll be a group of people kind of in the middle that will be has a bit of. Basically.
Yes, exactly.
So now I know that your specialty is consulting. So let me ask you this. If I want to buy a farm, how do I determine if that ranch, say it's a 40, 50, 60 acre ranch somewhere in the Central Valley, how do I determine if it has long-term abundant water supplies? What's the process for doing that?
Well, I believe there is the statement, the disclaimer that all investment people give as far as past performance does not indicate future performance.
Right.
And that really is true with water. You try to understand what water that they have had access to and what is going on around that area. So in the Central Valley, if you are looking for property, what I tell my clients is that, okay, we need to understand what you're wanting to do with the property. Are you wanting to farm it? Are you wanting to have irrigated field crops, which are like annual crops, tomatoes, hay, cotton, or are you wanting to have permanent plantings such as nuts, citrus, grapes, that type of thing? And then depending upon what you want to choose there, we would then look at soils. So what type of soils are best for those types of crops? Then we need to look at water, because the water needs for each crop are different. So if you were to say, does this have enough water? Well, it's relative.
Right. So if I know what the crops are, so if I'm happy with the soils, I know what the crop is. Let's just, for argument's sake, say citrus.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to redevelop a farm for citrus, just for argument's sake.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to plant some trees and I'm going to wait until they start to bear fruit, literally. What is the process for determining whether or not, what the water supply is like? Let me just précise that question with this. Okay. There are some irrigation districts. If you were to look at a broad sweep of the Central Valley, there are some irrigation districts that you just know are toast.
Yes.
And there are others that you know have abundant water. So where do you start on this? Kind of look at 50,000 feet. Where do you start diving down?
So what we look at to begin with is how many sources of water do they have? So normally you would like to have 2 sources of water in best case scenario. And what we mean by that is, going back to our discussion just a few minutes ago, surface water and groundwater. So with the 2 forms of water, okay, we'll have the surface water, which is delivered water, and then the groundwater, or a well, for the ability to take water out of the ground. So if it has 2 sources, that is a great place to start. Then, just because you have a well doesn't mean you have the best quality of water, because we have a lot of quality issues in the Central Valley. Salinity is one of the big issues, high salt content. And so you want to make sure that, okay, you have a quality of water. And a lot of people will actually blend the surface water with the well water to get the high quality. So
right, and a good indicator of good groundwater is the depth to which you have to drill, isn't it? If you only have to drill to 100 feet, chances are you've probably got better water than somebody who's going to 2,000 feet.
Not necessarily, because we have a lot of areas that have perched water tables, which means that the water is very close to the surface, and it's actually not the best quality of water. So from a cost perspective, you want to keep it as shallow as possible because you're paying by the foot to drill a well. So you want to keep it as shallow as possible. And being able to go into an artisan well, or find one of those springs is really good. But you just need to test the water whenever you have it. So I always ask my clients to actually get a pump and a well test to know the efficiency of the pump and to know the quality of water that is coming out.
Now, you talk about your clients. I'm going to pivot away from water a little bit. So in the Central Valley, what are the typical characteristics or, of the, I hate to stereotype, I just, for somebody who knows absolutely nothing, like me, what are the typical characteristics of a stereotypical Central Valley farmer? Just kind of describe, what does that world look like?
Okay. That's very hard for me because I am not a stereotypical person, and so I always try to find something outside of that.
But would it be worth?
But there's a lot of I would say family farms. Okay, generational people that are fourth, fifth generation. Century farms, their families have been on this land for 100 years, and the size of the farms is growing, just like everywhere else, and they're a little bit larger than they may be, let's say, in different areas of the U.S.
So what kind of size would you say in the Central Valley? It's the only thing I'm focused on. Central Valley. What for these century farms? What is the kind of typical range of sizes in terms of acres?
Oh gosh, I haven't really come across anybody that has the same size.
Yeah, but like
a section of ground is 640 acres, so that's a mile by a mile. Now, it would be with these generational farmers, they've accumulated land over the years, and so they would be, I assume, around that range.
600, but there are also
400 to 600 acres.
But there's also a lot of much smaller farms, aren't there, Paige? Like in the 50 plus or minus acre. You can raise a family on 50 acres of land in the Central Valley.
Well, it's a little hard in California, but depending upon what you grow, because we grow 400 different crops in California, and we grow a lot of specialty crops. So with that, you could do, let's say, strawberries if you have great strawberry ground. And that's a high dollar crop. Or you can do herbs for the Asian market, say. So we have a lot of ways to make good money on that 40 to 60 acre piece.
The smaller pieces. Now, who's buying farms in the Central Valley? What kind of trends are you seeing in terms of the buyer market?
We see a lot of farms just transitioning between families. Just the farmer next door, or the grower down the street that they're looking to increase their size. And we see a lot of that, but we also see a lot of institutional investing that is coming in to the Central Valley. And that is everything from your crowdfunding type of people to retirement funds.
And what are they looking for? What are the big institutional buyers looking for? What's
land?
Driving? like large amounts of land.
Yes. Large tracts of land, usually, that they're not going after the 40 acre piece unless they have a plan in the area, which it appears that some of them do, that they're picking up the smaller pieces as they build their portfolio. And if there can be a contiguous parcels, that they'll try to piece those together over time. Whereas the grower is just going to go and get the piece that works out best for them.
And what kind of size for an institutional player who's not buying 40-acre ranches, what kind of size are they looking for? You want to talk about large.
What I've seen, and I've only seen a small portion because I don't normally deal with institutional buyers. So what I've seen is that it's 800 acres and above.
And are they redeveloping, or they want land that's already fully mature and productive?
Both. They are not as much development now in permanent plantings due to Sigma in the water. But previously it was, yes, buy this land, plant almonds and make our money and be fine. But now they're being a little more strategic and looking at the water situation and the plantings that are on it. But there's been the stuff that is selling is all across the board, from being developed to being redeveloped to being mature.
Now, let's talk about this, what I call the supply chain, which isn't quite right. But from farm to table, people don't have this intuitive understanding of where their food comes from. You go to the supermarket and your lettuce is packed in a bag, right? It's like, oh, look, it miraculously came here. Or your oranges are packed in you don't give any thought at all to how it actually got there. So tell me something about the role of packing in the Central Valley in the farm industry. How does that fit in, and how does it work?
Okay. The overall idea, I guess, is easier to understand. We have growers, packers, and shippers. Okay, so that is if you take it down to a very simple level, those are the three methods. So we have the people that grow it, and the people that package it together in whatever form, and then the people that sell it and transport it to the public. And so the packing or processing piece is very important, because you have people that are vertically integrated that do all three. They're a grower, packer, shipper. And then you have people that are just one or the other. They want to focus on being a packer or a processor, and that's what they do well. And so they get growers from all around to then, an example would be for almonds. Okay, so if you're going to an almond processor, it takes a lot of almonds to be able to keep that plant running efficiently and keep the production level so it makes money. So you have to have a lot of growers that contribute to that. And normally at that scale, you're not able to do that on an individual basis. So whether if you're growing citrus, you may be able to have your own packing shed, say, and then be able to sell out into the market on your own. But the processors,
that's rare, isn't it? Most people, they hire a third-party packer. And just so that I understand this right, the way that the economics work of that is that, so you farm the land, right? You go out, you water the crops, and you prune the trees, and that's all you do. And you call a packer, and the packer says, okay, we'll be there on Tuesday. And they show up and they harvest the crop, transport it to a packing house where it's sorted, and then they transport it to and then it's actually packed there, isn't it? It's actually put into boxes or bags, and then it's shipped to the end supermarket, whatever chain, whoever it is, it's shipped out from there. And the way that it works, and correct me if I'm wrong, what the packer does is they say, okay, we'll be there on Tuesday. And on Wednesday, they say, here's what your crop was worth.
Yes.
And they did. So that's the price set by the supermarket somehow, or the distributor. Well, I don't know what the retail.
Well, it's actually, it's because the grower gets paid when he sells the crop, right? So the packer may not do the harvesting. The grower may do the harvesting as well. But anyway, the idea is to get the crop or the product to the handler, the processor.
Right.
So, and they will sell, the processor will buy that product from the grower.
Oh, they do? I thought that they took it, I thought the way that packing worked was that they would come in, harvest the produce, sell it, and then deduct their costs and write a check to the farmer. Here, we sold it for this were our costs, here's your check.
Yes, that is one way that it happens. That's a cooperative style, that if it's going into a pool or, everything is coming together. And then as a grower, then you would get the remittance based upon how they sold it. I know like raisins will go either way. So you will sell your raisins to a processor, and you may have a contract for so many dollars per ton upon delivery and quality. And then the processor then sells it for whatever they can to make that margin, to make their money. But there are also ones that say, okay, we're going to pool our resources, and all of the growers are going to put their product together. We're going to then sell it, and the growers will get advances throughout the year based on an estimated price they think that the shipper thinks they're going to get, and then a final payout, at the end of the season.
Right.
So
And
there's a couple of different ways.
And from that, the cost of packing and shipping everything, that's all deducted.
Well,
obviously,
it
from
depends,
what the farmer
yeah,
gets.
it depends upon the contract of how you're getting it. But yes, overall. Mm-hmm.
Paige, I was just looking at the time. I can't believe we've been talking so long. I remember the first time we spoke, it just flew by as well. So let's wrap up. I don't want to keep you any longer. I don't want you to tell the next person, oh my goodness, I've been on 3 calls now. So let's wrap up with some 3 questions. These are just rapid fire, quick, simple, rapid fire questions. Here we go. I ask all of my guests the same thing. Paige, to be successful and productive, what are your key daily habits?
My key daily habits are starting in the morning, making a plan. I use a high performance planner and sit down and take 10 minutes to plan out the day, what's going on, make me think of some questions of who I want to reach out to, who's important, how I'm going to handle things if they aren't, don't go the way that I want, and use that to schedule my day so my day doesn't schedule me. So that's the number one thing. And then just try to everything in moderation. Try to make sure that I'm eating well, I'm sleeping well, I'm exercising to make sure that I'm there for the next day.
Perfect. All right. Second of the last 3 questions. What's been so this is actually a tricky question. Normally I ask people, what's been the hardest lesson you've learned in real estate? So let me just phrase this slightly differently for you. What's been the hardest lesson you've learned either in business or you've seen learned in farming?
The hardest lesson for me was understanding that, there is an established network in agriculture, and it is very difficult to get into that circle because they keep it very close. And that understanding that was probably the best thing, but the hardest thing to overcome.
That's really interesting. All right, last question. So you know that my interest is in real estate crowdfunding of farm land and ranches in Central California, Central Valley. So for somebody who is not involved in farming at all, right? They eat the produce, but they have a day job and they've got no idea what's going on. and they are thinking of investing in a farm through crowdfunding, what advice would you give them?
I would say research the platform and the people that you are going through, and have trust in them, because that is what you are going to them for. They should be doing all of the information. They should be providing the information that is valuable to you. And also, don't go blindly. That have the people that you trust, but also, just check in. And for people like me, that's what I do. I provide that independence of somebody wants to bounce an idea, say, hey, I'm seeing this, it doesn't seem right. I can go and look at that. But I would say having trust in who you're using and who your platform is.
Paige Gilligan, what an enormous pleasure to see you again and to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
That was Paige Gilligan of Risk Mitigators and Advisors, telling us what she knows about farmland investing in California. If you want to learn more about Paige, please go to the podcast page at gowercrowd.com and be sure to sign up for our newsletter. There, subscribe at gowercrowd.com. It is the only newsletter that is exclusively dedicated to real estate, crowdfunding, and syndication. That's it for today. Thank you so much, Paige. What a pleasure it's been meeting you. Paige Gilligan of Risk Mitigators and Advisors. And thanks for spending your time with me today. And thank you to dear listener for joining us today. I hope you found it as interesting as I do. Farmland is an amazing asset class, definitely worth learning about. That's it for today. Be well, stay safe, and for now, this is Adam Gower signing off.